मेदिनि विश्वविनोदिनि नन्दिनुते गिरिवरविन्द्य शिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिनि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिणि दितिश्रुतरोषिणि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Let me know if the audio is coming fine or not. So, as you all know, Dr. Shomode gifted me this book, who has been on our podcast as well many times. Probably one of the best historians alive today in India, and of course, definitely the greatest Bengali historian, at least in the country right now. He did his PhD from JNU, incidentally, which I mentioned in the title of this video as well, just for the fun sake of it. So what I've done is this book, Seedbed of Pakistan, which you must absolutely buy. There's only one copy left at the moment on Amazon, and I've given the affiliate link to the book in my description box. So that book has a 12-page introduction, okay? So as you all know, introductions are basically a gist of the entire book. So I thought, while reading it properly, let's not read this book at least like just another book I would read. That I go through the book, I read every page, I mark some things, note some things down with some stickers and stuff. Let's get to this book with a fine-tooth comb, and I wanted to read it as if it's a book that I need to read for my syllabus or my academics, okay? So I really studied the book. I spent 4 hours reading the introduction, which I would not if I had not taken so much notes. So the introduction was just 12 pages and my notes are of 14 pages. So what I'm going to discuss today are my notes from the introduction, that things I noted down, things I pondered over, questions that came to my mind, which probably will be answered later in the book, or I'll ask Dr. Shomode himself the next time he comes to our podcast. But there are interesting, very, very clear, interesting things that he has brought out. Although for people who have read Venkat Dhulipala's work, a lot of the information will be known to you, especially because I've read India, Bharat, Pakistan again, which is also which draws heavily from Venkat Dhulipala's work as well. And there was one legendary, one famous Russian historian whose PhD thesis was on the formation of Congress. So a lot of things were clarified there as well, which also J. Sai Deepak cites extensively in his book. But Dr. Shomode does something original here, which we'll get to. He looks at some other troubles that were going on in the minds of the Muslim elites, which were one of the reasons for the creation of Pakistan. So we go through timelines. It's a very well written, systematically written book. We go through the timelines. We go through different kinds of opinions from absolutely credentialed and I mean legit scholars inside academia, okay, but who are from both sides of the opinions, okay. That's why these kinds of works are great, because you can cite these sources. These are legit people to cite, okay. Let me check some comments now, and then I'll start the discussion of the introduction. These are my notes on the introduction. My notes are basically a gist. A gist is supposed to be shorter than the actual thing, but mine was actually bigger. Nandish is saying the state engaged itself in senseless suppression of nationalism and withered away in the attempt. Pakistan or Partition of India, book by Ambedkar. Yeah. Yeah, Venkat Dhulipala's work, and now this book is absolutely must-read books as well, according to me. So The book's full name is The Seedbed of Pakistan: Cultural Conflicts, Elite Muslim Anxieties, and the Congress, 1885 to 1906. Now, these 2 years are important. What happened in 1885? Congress was formed, and 1906 we'll get to later. So, what's the goal of the book? The goal of the book is to looking to quote unquote pin the blame for the enormous cataclysm that was the partition, to pin that blame on some cogent reason or identifiable agency. So, what's the scholarly consensus on the topic? That Muhammad Ali Jinnah's role and intentions, and everyone said that Congress stood for Indian unity throughout that era, whereas Muhammad Ali Jinnah was mainly to be blamed. This is from Shekhar Bandyopadhyay's book, from Plassey to Partition and After. Aisha Jalal also says, okay, Aisha Jalal actually disagrees. She says that Jinnah did not quite want partition, but meant it only as a bargaining counter. She mentions this in her book, The Sole Spokesman, 2017. Now, Aisha Jalal is the wife of Dr. Shugato Bosu, Trinamool Congress MP, who disagrees with Anuj Dhar and Chandrachud Ghosh that Netaji survived the crash. So, actually, Aisha Jalal is I guess one would call a leftist historian, but she's a Canadian Pakistani woman. But her research is so legit that people who want just facts to be shown and then the interpretation will be left to the author, those sorts of people always end up citing Aisha Jalal extensively. In India, Bharat, Pakistan, on my video when I was researching the stuff that Rumi, researching the kind of people Rumi had inspired, okay? When I was trying to make a video on Brahmastra, because Brahmastra was originally supposed to be based on Rumi's work or Rumi's life or something. There also, every website I went to study research on these topics, Aisha Jalal came up repeatedly because she's a pretty honest sort of a scholar. So Aisha Jalal says Jinnah did not quite want partition, but meant it only as a bargaining counter. On the other hand, Anita Inder Singh, is she the daughter of Manmohan Singh? Manmohan Singh's daughter is also a famous sociologist or a famous historian or something, right? Anita Inder Singh says Jinnah wanted the establishment of Pakistan and partition. This is from her book, The Origins of the Partition of India, from 1990. So these are the little bit of consensus and some disagreements. The book tries to examine the discursive foundations of the Pakistan idea in the way of certain tendencies, psychologies, perspectives, and political maneuvers found in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Now, Sir Saad Ahmed Khan, he supported neither the Congress's imagination of Indian nationhood nor the political reforms demanded by the Congress. 1906, Ashraf demand for proportional representation on a communal basis, establishing Muslims as a quote-unquote distinct political interest group deserving of special consideration. So I really like this point particularly because when we think of political interest groups, we think of like maybe different castes or maybe people from one particular profession, like that. No one can fathom, I think, in India to consider, except Muslims probably and Christians, in fact, that entire religion itself will be a distinct political interest group. So, and the Ashrafs thought about it much before anyone else did, and Dr. Shomode points this out. But Sir Saad Ahmed Khan is, of course, a very important figure in this conversation, because I noticed something that Sir Saad Ahmed Khan, you could argue, was the Muslim equivalent of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, but he was successful in ways that Raja Ram Mohan Roy wasn't for his community. That's what a Swedish Pakistani political scientist. Aisha Jalal has been totally demolished by Ishtiaq Ahmed in his book Jinnah, His Success, Failure. Okay, yeah, on this specific topic, this specific argument that Jinnah was to blame or not. Okay, yeah, but otherwise demolished would not be a fair description of Aisha Jalal's work. So now the Ashraf vision also ended up in the Shimla deputation 3 months later. AIML founded in Dhaka, so 1906, 1885 to 1906. So while discussing partition or the founding of Pakistan, Dr. Shomode let's say constrains himself to discuss the era only from 1885 to 1906, क्योंकि उस बीच में ही जो होना था हो गया था. So All India Muslim League founded in Dhaka organizational expression, quote unquote, organizational expression of the Shimla deputation's points of view in the long term. Then 1940, Pakistan resolution, demand for Pakistan. Now, first question that came to my mind is that why did the Ashraf remain aloof from the Congress vision of Indian statehood? Answer might be that colonial statehood vis-a-vis the generally backward Muslim society. And this is one interesting thing that Dr. Shomode repeatedly brings out, that many historians have gone on to claim that at the heart of all this anxiety was Muslim backwardness. We'll get to those specific points as well, that who said in what way the Muslim backwardness affected their political visions, okay? And then we'll get to the counter arguments as well from Dr. Shomode and other legit historians as well. So Peter Hardy, a famous historian, first his opinions, okay? Opinions of Peter Hardy. So Ashraf Muslims required a separate social as well as religious personality, okay? Ashraf Muslims acquired a separate social as well as religious personality, and then were of course aloof from the Indian National Congress vision as well. And this is from Peter Hardy's book, The Muslims of British India, 1998. So the British tried to address their backwardness, okay? The British saw Indian Muslims as sometimes as a this is Peter Hardy's exact quote, that the British saw Indian Muslims as sometimes as a ghoul, Ghoul, sometimes as a phantom, sometimes as a Frankenstein's monster, but always as a bogey. According to Peter Hardy, the British were intervening as a colonial power in the center of the Muslim world, okay? Because the other places that were under the British government's rule, under the colonial rule, many of those countries were Muslim countries as well. So the British were kind of in the midst of a Muslim world. So according to Peter Hardy, the British were intervening as a colonial power in the center of the Muslim world and were concerned with the seemingly extraterritorial loyalties of the Indian Muslims. Ashrafs responded positively. Peter Hardy writes, a perceptive Muslim of the educated classes could see in the 1870s and early 1880s that the British were ready to treat Muslims as a distinct political interest in India. Now, my question for Dr. Shomode will be, I've noted this down, maybe it will be answered later in the book, or maybe later in the introduction as well, or I'll ask him when he comes on the podcast, that is Peter Hardy trying to say that British affirmation of these Ashraf concerns was a sort of a compensation or overcompensation for their conflicts with Muslims elsewhere? Is it the case? Probably. Now we got to learn Peter Hardy's opinion. Now Mushirul Hasan, another historian, his opinion. Okay, so Mushirul Hasan is saying Muslims mobilized as a distinct political interest group because the colonial state did not cater to them through patronage and dispersal of resources. This Mushirul Hasan mentions in his book Nationalism and Communal Politics in India from the year 2000. So the British did not cater to their needs, and did not disperse enough resources, did not patronize them, apparently, whatever that means, and in whatever way that was supposed to be done anyway. So anyway, Mushirul Hasan has a complaint that the British did not keep the Muslims happy enough, therefore they turned into a distinct political interest group. So Hasan writes, quote, a separate and distinct political consciousness among Indian Muslims was caused by their placement in, quote unquote, the political and economic structures and their access to the levers of authority and influences under colonial rule. Now, in order to argue this case, Mushirul Hasan brings out something fascinating. He says, communal antipathy was greatest in Bengal. Why? Because in Bengal, Muslims had virtually no access to the resources of the province, because it was all taken up by Bengali Hindus, and back then Bengali meant Bengali Hindu. So here my first question for Dr. Shomode will be that did the British really favor the Hindus over Muslims when it came to patronage and dispersal of resources? Now, what I realized later on was, while reading the introduction only, that actually this is where Raja Ram Mohan Roy's master stroke was, in a way, okay, and where let's say people like Sir Syed Ahmed Khan saw what Raja Ram Mohan Roy did good and also learned from his mistake what he did, and did not repeat that mistake for themselves. Okay. Sir Said Ahmed Khan starts, I guess Aligarh Muslim University was founded in 1875, I think. But in general, Sir Said Ahmed Khan becomes a popular figure at around the time of 1875. Okay. Raja Ram Mohan Roy has passed away in 1833. Raja Ram Mohan Roy wrote that infamous or famous letter where he asked for English education in 1823, 10 years before passing away. Okay. Now see, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan saw 40 years of Raja Ram Mohan Roy's ideas spreading like wildfire in the richer sections of Hindu society in India and mainly Bengal, right? So what was Raja Ram Mohan Roy's idea? That, okay, uh, religion, spirituality, Sanskrit learning, all that will come later on. Okay, if at all you want to do it, do in your own free time. But whatever education system now is going to be set up is going to absolutely focus on Western learning, English education, and learning everything in English. So following that path, and since Brahmo Samajism was gaining heavy popularity in Kolkata already, and Kolkata is the capital, so all the Bengali Hindu elites, they take this pill, they drink this Kool-Aid, and as a result of taking Raja Ram Mohan Roy's ideas at face value, what the good thing that happens to them is all of them get significant success in their careers while the colonial powers are in India. Okay, all these people become famous bureaucrats, historians, and stuff because their secret weapon was English language, learning the English language, and therefore getting their foot inside the systems of power. Okay, and that's where Muslims were lacking. So by 1875, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan notices that, okay, all these Hindus have become so successful, and therefore which gives people like Mushrul Hasan an excuse to say that the British actively kept Muslims away from patronage and dispersing resources, etc. Whereas it was probably because of Raja Ram Mohan Roy that the Hindu elites reached the levers of power out on their own, by their own achievements, and because of their own credit, by just learning English and getting into those educational systems, which the Muslims did not. So Sir Syed Ahmed Khan proposes then, of course, that, and which is why he's called a great reformer of Islam in India, that learn English, get into Western academia, learn Western education, learn Western reason, science, everything. But he clarifies, maybe directly, indirectly, many times, or what ends up happening is that the one thing that he and Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the impact of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan is different from the impact of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, is that he makes sure Muslims remain as Muslim as possible. That do not forget to be Muslims, do not forget the duties of being a Muslim, but get into Western education system and colonial bureaucracy anyway. Okay, that's where Raja Ram Mohan Roy did not have the hindsight, I guess, to prevent this mistake, and he was short-sighted enough to not understand that what insane repercussions these things were going to cause. Okay, because never again after that, all the concerns that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan had, all the concerns that Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka, Syed Amir Ali, these people, the concerns that these people showcased and talked about repeatedly in open letters, petitions, everything, that the Hindu elite is on top of every power structure everywhere. Never again that happens from then to now. Okay, after the Muslim elites address this problem, never again Hindu elites reach positions of power. Now Hindu elites do reach in positions of power even today, but only in name, because those Hindu elites are today Marxists. So what we have to understand is, what magic did Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, Syed Amir Ali do that prevented ever again a non-Marxist Hindu elite from being in any position of power? And we'll get to those sections that has been described in the introduction as well, that things they dreamed of is going on even today. So I guess there's Raja Ram Mohan Roy's contribution. He did not know maybe that this is what is going to happen. Bengal Hindus stopped being Hindus, especially political Hindus. Yes, it is wrong to call Raja Ram Mohan Roy short-sighted. I'd argue that Muslims, despite everything, would still act the way they did. Their bhav is sheer jealousy. They can't see Hindu progress, probably. Why doesn't Gujarat, one of the richest state in our country, doesn't make good quality and pan-Indian type film? Good question. I think they will soon, maybe. Some localities have a specific bent of mind towards something very particular, right? So I guess like uh, Maharashtra, now Bengal, hub of art and culture and stuff. But since Gujarat is essentially only focused towards money making, they have not jumped into this bandwagon yet. But many Gujaratis are making it big in Maharashtra. So I think it's only a matter of time that good stuff comes out of Gujarat as well. It needs 2-3 generations. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is saying, Aju is saying Raja Ram Mohan Roy was busy preparing making Hindus to make into sheep to be slaughtered with his experiment called Brahma Samaj. Yeah, but there was a Hindu elite that reached positions of power, that also because of Raja Ram Mohan Roy only. Okay. So, so how much of it was because of British preference of the Bengali Bhadralok versus general lack of Ashraf population in Kolkata as well? Because most Bengali Muslims were tribal converts and not from the Chaturvarna fold. And as a result, these are my points that I've written down, okay? And as a result, were more quote unquote uneducated and had lesser access to power anyway than the Hindus and Hindu converts to Islam, okay? That might be another reason why Muslims in general in Bengal were, as Mushirul Hasan at least accuses, that Muslims of Bengal specifically were far away from any positions of power and the levers of power, resources of the province, etc. All those things. This also might be one of the reasons, because the Ashraf population itself in Bengal region was very less, because most converted Muslims in Bengal were converted from different tribes who were not in the Chaturvarna system to begin with, and therefore were far removed from the mainstream education system anyway. Okay. Now, Peter Hardy and Mushirul Hasan's opinion, therefore, is that at the root of Indian Muslim politics lay backwardness. There's only one little difference. Peter Hardy says backwardness happens and backwardness just is a reality, and British uses that backwardness of Muslims and therefore uses those backward Muslims as pawns. Whereas Mushirul Hasan is saying British created that backwardness. Now, M. Mujib, another historian, he says in his book Indian Muslims, the book's name is called The Indian Muslims, from 2017. His opinion is that Muslims were the backward subjects of a non-Muslim state, quote unquote, and Indian Muslims developed their unique political point of view. So, M. Mujib, Peter Hardy, Mushirul Hasan, all three agree that Muslim backwardness was at the heart of Muslim politics. Now, the counter opinions. First, from Dr. Soumya himself. Now, he'll base these on other scholars as well. Two main counter arguments by Dr. Soumya. He says, Ashraf were anything but backward. The entire movement was being driven forward by Ashrafs, the Muslim elites. They were not remotely backward. Point 2. They themselves, they never based their politics, the Muslim politics, on educational or economic laggardness of Muslims. Those Muslim elites themselves never said that we are lagging behind in economics or education, therefore we are asking for a separate state, nation, separate communal voting rights, etc. They themselves never said those things. It's other historians who are observing the facts of the day and pointing out that, yeah, they seem to be backward. Oh, therefore, let's just be a Marxist and therefore pin everything on the backwardness of that community. Whereas the leaders of that community did not base their movement on the backwardness of Muslims. So, counter opinions from someone called, not someone called, a famous historian, Francis Robinson. Francis Robinson says in his 1994 book, the book is called The Separatism Among Indian Muslims. First point, Muslims were a dominant minority. Secondly, disproportionately well represented. Muslims were disproportionately well represented in both land ownership and government jobs. Third point, this class of Muslims began to politically organize as there was an erosion of their erstwhile status in the province. We know this point to be very common these days. Many non-left historians and scholars these days argue this particular point, that they were basically sad and angry that the Mughal might of yesteryears was going down. And in fact, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, as shown by J. Deepak in his book India, Bharat, Pakistan, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan points out that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan actually admits at one point that yes, after all, Christians are also a people of the book. So even if we have to live in subordination to some other community, it will be, we are okay with living in subordination to the Christians, but not Hindus, definitely. So Francis Robinson writes, colonial administrations attempts to introduce Western learning and promote vernaculars. This thing, this action by the colonial government, this threatened, quote unquote, threatened their religious beliefs, social customs, and political position. Plus, it also was the introduction of the elective principle in local government, which, quote unquote, undermined its influence. Okay, it meaning the Muslim elite or the Muslim community in general, undermined its influence. Okay, therefore, cultural concerns and the distrust of representative democracy from Muslim side. And so you see, uh, Hindus listening to Raja Ram Mohan Roy were able to succeed because of not falling into this particular trap that the Muslims fell in, which Sir Syed Ahmed Khan had to point them out to come out of that trap from. It was a call by Sir Syed Ahmed Khan that come out of this trap and then succeed in life. And I'm a huge fan of Syed Amir Ali, whom I've put in the thumbnail on the right as well, because the way he writes, the way he articulates his demands, absolutely phenomenal. And I think wokeism was born in India. Many people argue already, but I think even Indian Marxists learned wokeism properly from Syed Amir Ali and Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka to some extent. If you read India, Bharat, Pakistan, Desai Deepak quotes Syed Amir Ali extensively, and Syed Amir Ali, there's a road in Kolkata as well named Syed Amir Ali Avenue. I did not know who that man was until I read India, Bharat, Pakistan. You have not read letters written like that from, I think, any Indian Hindu back then. Probably Ambedkar comes close. The clarity of thought, the articulation, and the skill to make any demand sound a legit demand. Okay, that is the grasp Syed Amir Ali has. And I think if someone's doing English literature graduation and masters, I think they should be taught Syed Amir Ali's writing skills in their. They should be taught Syed Amir Ali's open letters and stuff. Okay, so at one point, Syed Amir Ali says that we have no problems with our Hindu brothers, but we just can't take the risk. Basically, that we can't be at their mercy, right? What if Hindus really attack us after they come to power? What if they subjugate us in an evil way? So we are just looking for different interests and different power structures for ourselves. That's all. But the way he articulates it is insane. Muslim elites always care about survival and expansion of Muslim society. Yes, if I'm not wrong, Bose converted to marry her. I don't know. I think perspective we look at the English education is wrong. Okay, Hindu elites never care about survival of Hindu society, and by extension, Bharatiya society. They lack political will. Yes. Would you please give all the reference book names in description box? Okay. After the live stream, then. Okay. Next counter opinion from someone from another famous historian called Farzana Sheikh. She writes in her 1989 book. The book is called Community and Consensus in Islam. Okay. She also points out, her first point is that Muslims brought a culturally derived language to establish how special they were, how distinct they were. And what did they base it on? They based it on Islamic culture. Why? Since they once formed the apex of the quote-unquote ruling class structure, the Mongol-Mughal ideas were part of their political thinking. This is Farzana Sheikh pointing out. Because why is this a counter? This seems like an obvious thing, right? That, yeah, of course, everything Muslim politics was surrounded on or surrounded around was basically Islamic culture only. Why is this not obvious? Farzana Sheikh's argument is still very important because this is a counter to the mainstream Marxist history reading that Muslim politics was was secular in a way that this was based on Muslim backwardness, etc. Aurangzeb played Veena. All the temple destruction happened because of economics. Everything started and ended with economics, according to mainstream Marxist historians. So therefore, Farzana Sheikh's account, actually interpretation becomes important because she's pointing out that no, it was based on Islamic culture itself. Their politics was rooted in Islamic culture. Second point is that some of the Ashraf political psychology was quote-unquote Islamically derived, Farzana Sheikh is saying, and drew from assumptions familiar to Muslim political discourse since the consolidation of Islam as a world religion. Okay, ideas, assumptions that were familiar to Muslim political discourse since the consolidation of Islam as a world religion. From then on, those ideas were alive in India as well, and it was those ideas that were the basis of Muslim politics in India in that period of 1885 to 1906. You folks should read Today is a Fallen People. It really goes into what Hindu elites around Ram Mohan Roy were thinking. This notion that Hindu elites of the past did not care is fundamentally wrong. Congress did not care. They always had their head in the sand. Hindu elites thought extensively about Hindu society. Now, if they did think about Hindu society, then it's an even bigger trouble because they did not succeed. And of course, some did. Bankim was a Hindu elite. Jagannatha Sarkar was a Hindu elite. Sri Aurobindo was a Hindu elite. So yeah, of course, not all of them, but mostly I think they weren't bothered about survival of the Hindu community, which I guess is proven by the lack of success of the Hindu elites. So people like Bankim, Sri Aurobindo were, I think, a minority inside the Hindu elite. Okay, Ajju is saying Paris Olympics opening was an attempt by France to take back credit of France being the birthplace of wokeism. But yeah, Gojira's performance was there, so I can't be that angry with this. Opening ceremony. How would you define success when you subjugated or were subjugated by a remote empire? Wait, what? 1947 onwards. Therefore, 1947 onwards, it's Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, Syed Amir Ali's dreams that's been being brought to fruition even today, not the views of Sri Aurobindo or Bankim. Okay, so therefore, based on Farzana Sheikh's interpretations of things, Ashraf politics must keep in mind their Mughal heritage plus the moral imagination based on Islam. Now, Dr. Shomode's points. States are culture power formations. I really like this statement and this way of looking at states. States are basically culture-power formations. The cultural persona of the Mughal Empire was quote-unquote Islamicate, that is, projected power using cultural tropes and symbols associated with Muslim society. Therefore, again, as a counter to mainstream Marxist history, not a secular or economics-based empire, but at the very least, at least symbolically a religious vision of politics. For example, Shomode brings out these points. Curtailment of the cultural displays of non-Muslims. Okay, if it was all based on economics and not on cultural symbols of Islam, Muslim politics, if it was not based on cultural symbols of Islam, why then would there be curtailment of the cultural displays of non-Muslims? Shomode writes, the Ashraf formed the bureaucratic vanguard of the Islamicate culture power formation, that is the Mughal Empire. Now, my question for Dr. Shomode will be that, did the above fact lead to elite Hindu anxiety as well? If it didn't, why? And if no, why not? If yes, what were the examples? Because if Hindu elite succeeding is causing Muslim elite anxiety, why isn't then a rise of the Muslim elite and their curtailment of displays of non-Hindus? Why isn't that creating an anxiety among the Hindu elites as well? And now that I think of it, now that since we discuss it based on the comment section, that yeah, I guess so Bankim, Sri Aurobindo were the products of those anxieties as well. Bipin Chandrapal, all of those people. So Shomode writes, the Mughals displayed a strong preference for Persian plus Persianate tongue of Urdu, plus in association with non-elite Muslims, that is Pasmandas, they curtailed cultural displays of non-Muslims. Okay, so all this goes to prove that it was not a secular or just economics-based idea of politics. It was based on Islamic culture and at the very least symbolically religious. Okay, so Shomode points out that Mughals displayed a strong preference for Persian. Why Persian? Why not any other language? The Persianate tongue of Urdu, and in association with the non-elite Muslims, meaning the Pasmandas, they curtailed cultural displays of non-Muslims. Now, another question for Shomode I have is that, did the preference for Persian or Persianate tongue of Urdu oppress Pasmandas? Because they were then further removed from levers of power, right? Because the Pasmandas, as you all know, At least maybe today the case is different, but back then Urdu was not the go-to language, or Persian was absolutely not the go-to language for the local Hindu converts from lower castes or poorer backgrounds, right? So, and if Persian is focused and is thrust upon them as the main language, how are they going to get into the education system or the levers of power? So wasn't it then, as a counter to Mushirul Hasan, then my question would be that wasn't it basically the Ashraf who was preventing Pasmandas from reaching levers of power and educational systems? But I have to ask Dr. Shomode as well. So, and another point is that if yes, if so, then what steps did they take to manage their to manage the Pasmanda expectations? What steps did the Ashrafs take to manage Pasmanda expectations, to instead use them as foot soldiers to curtail that cultural display of non-Muslims? Because on the one hand, it could be argued that they were probably oppressing Pasmandas, in the way that they kept Pasmandas away from the education system and levers of power, because Persian was being focused on. On the other hand, it was those same Pasmandas who were and who today help Ashrafs to curtail the cultural displays of non-Muslims. How is this going on? I was here when you had 1.65k subs and you were discussing Jaitai Zipak's books. Glad to see the channel grow. Thank you. And Neon is saying no because they are okay. Anyway, so 19th century onwards, Ashrafs begin to lose authority as both administrators and land controllers. Parallelly, Hindu elites get assertive in formerly Ashraf-dominated urban spaces, which happens because of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Outbreaks of Hindu-Muslim strife. Ashrafs stop being the dominant minority. New rulers show open disregard for their way of life, which causes more distress among the Muslim elites. Emotional anguish of the ulema now. Why? Because Indian Islam was no longer under court patronage, which could be argued, I guess, again, is now, right? This is why I'm saying that the vision of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, Syed Amir Ali succeeded in 1947, post-1947 India, and the exact problems that they had with the Hindu elite, or the way things were being run under the friendship of the Hindu elite and the colonial powers, those exact same troubles have been answered today, and those concerns have been addressed today. And if Sir Syed Ahmed Khan and Syed Amir Ali were today alive, they would be absolutely happy and giddy with the way India is being run. Okay, that's what I'm noticing from the concerns of those years, that Shomode is pointing out that emotional anguish of the ulema increased because Indian Islam was no longer under court patronage, which I think can be argued is today patronized. Ulema role in functioning of colonial state gradually denied. Therefore, ulema begins to reform to make the elite and non-elite Indian Muslims come together. How? By abolishing a slew of local cultural practices. This is interesting. I'll have to ask Dr. Shomode, or maybe I'll find out later in the book, that what slew of local cultural practices did they abandon or abolish? Because they were now trying to homogenize Islam more, or at least homogenize Indian Muslim society more and more, for which they would have to let go of their little local cultural distinct practices, which probably came from their pre-Islamic past of those particular communities, right? So they lose touch with their pre-Islamic past even more now, and they sacrifice that at the altar of general Muslim unity. So you see how community unity happens. Okay, Ashrafs get conspicuous leadership role in broader Indian Muslim society. Note, wasn't this always the case? Maybe later in the book I'll get the answer to this, but I wonder why Shomode points out at this juncture that now Ashrafs get conspicuous leadership role in broader Indian Muslim society. But I thought that they always had a leadership role. No, I guess since they got further homogenized and their decentralized nature of the Muslim society got further hampered, therefore I think there was a power vacuum, and which got filled up with the Ashraf elite immediately. Then next, Ashrafs begin their version of modernity, which is a hybrid, therefore, the hybrid seminary of Deoband, inspired by Delhi College, established by the British, comes up, which could be argued is somewhat on the Western mold, okay, at least according to Dr. Shomode. Now, in 1875, Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College is formed, which was more obviously Western-inspired modernity. Now, this is where I've written the note that Raja Ram Mohan Roy died in 1833. Muslims realized that Raja Ram Mohan Roy led to the rise of the Hindu elite, probably. What happened since then? These are my notes, okay? Why didn't Hindus sustain that dominance, or dominated but remained Marxist? Brahmo Samaj leading to decline of Hinduism, which led to Muslims getting benefit of learning from their mistakes, okay? Muslims, I think Muslim elites had the benefit of learning from the mistakes made by Hindu elites. And therefore made sure Islam didn't get sacrificed at the altar of just jobs and education, development. So Aligarh Muslim University meant to regenerate Indian Muslim society and reconcile with Western reason and British rule. Islamicate cultural tropes under vigorous assault now at this point, okay? For example, the British unseat Persian as the court language. Number 2, Hindus in Gangetic heartland waged aggressive agitations for Hindi Nagri against Urdu. Also, they wanted strict regulations for cow protection. This goes on in the Gangetic heartland, so the Hindi belt, basically the cow belt, okay? So everywhere Muslim elites are saying that they are getting threatened, but they had the far-sightedness of understanding that these small inch that is slipping away from Muslim hands on the narrative front, the little battles that they are beginning to lose, will have to be controlled right now. Okay, if you don't get on top of this right now, the community will end, which is what was realized by Syed Ahmed Khan and Syed Amir Ali. Then Hindus start achieving translocal solidarity. Okay, for the first time probably, Hindus achieve translocal solidarity. That if you're a Hindu from Maharashtra, if you're a Hindu from Bengal, you are friends. As society or communitas, okay? For the first time, Hindu society becomes a society or communitas by conducting public religious ceremonies with greater verve. Note, therefore, now this is my note today, therefore, when Dhanteras in Bengal is celebrated, and which from time to time some Bengali commies or Bengali chauvinists say that this is not Bengali culture. Growing up, we never celebrated Dhanteras. This is actually a good thing, because this also knowingly or unknowingly, unintentionally maybe even, leads Hindu society to become united regardless of their localities. Okay, this is a translocal unity again. At least some association, some feeling of camaraderie, fraternity with other Hindus from elsewhere. Okay, that is very good and very important. A battle of cultural symbols begin, which also goes on now, I guess, that we have to show off our symbols, they have to show off their symbols and stuff. So local self-government begins, which therefore leads to Hindus becoming more successful in municipal politics than Muslims, which leads to Hindus coming to power and seeking to implement their cultural agendas. So Muslim elites are seeing basically the ground shift from under their feet. Therefore, franchise and representative institutions, okay, voting-based institutions, they further decrease relevance of the Islamicate cultural paradigm, which used to be the hegemony in urban North India, Lucknow, Urdu, Shairi, poetry, etc. Now, Indian National Congress, established in the backdrop of this quote-unquote intensifying cultural conflicts and Hindu assertion in colonial North India, this is the backdrop when Indian National Congress comes to power. Now, Indian National Congress's vision of India is purely civic entity, just laws and stuff, rules and regulations. That is the basis of our country. That is the Indian National Congress vision. It will be a federation of religious and normative groups which are quote-unquote internally autonomous in values and mores. I guess meant for castes, not for Islam. Indian National Congress quote-unquote refused to discuss matters of social reform and also focused on political issues which were supposedly relevant to all, which in the end were relevant to none, until again 1947 onwards. And this backfires because Muslims refuse to be counted in this vision of India. Now, 1887, Ashrafs, who were wary of Congress's demand of franchise-based representation at provincial and central levels of British government, uh, they are losing their minds even more. Now, Sir Syed Ahmed calls this idea monstrous and unreasonable, quote unquote monstrous and quote unquote unreasonable. Okay, the Congress demand of franchise-based representation at provincial and central levels of British government. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, based on the majoritarian myth, basically, this is my note now. Based on that majoritarian myth that if Hindus are a majority, they will do something bad to Muslims. Based on that myth, he doesn't want Muslims to be at the mercy of Hindus, since Hindu population was 4 times that of Muslims in undivided India. Okay, the British India, and many people say that if partition did not happen, Hindus would not survive. Well, not based on population maths, at least. Okay, Hindus were 4 times that of Muslims, at least in 1887, I guess. The Aligarh Institute Gazette argues that Hindus, if they get voting rights, they will bring back Sati Pratha and will ban cow slaughter. So, cow slaughter and Sati Pratha goes hand in hand, according to Aligarh Institute Gazette. Next, Indian National Congress and Badruddin Tyabji correspond with each other. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan and Syed Amir Ali in 1887 and 1888 talk to Badruddin Tyabji. They ask them to bring the Muslim point of view. Okay, Badruddin Tyabji asks Sir Syed Ahmed Khan and Syed Amir Ali to bring the Muslim point of view. They refuse. Now, my note is that first attempt at appeasement politics, and that probably failed. Later, Congress institutionalizes communal veto. That is, Indian National Congress refused to take up any matter for discussion to which Hindus or Muslim delegates objected. Okay, and this idea was Badruddin Tyabji's brainchild. In 1889, 4 years after Congress has been founded, Congress accepts proportional representation, in principle at least. Now, my note is that why the desperation to bring in Muslims? Was this a desire to become the new power elite by hook or crook, since maybe someday soon the British will leave? So we'll have to get Muslims on board with our idea. Now, Muslims take up the offer and prioritize Muslim interests. Now, 1890s, Muslim membership in Congress plummets. Why? Maybe it will be explained later in the book. Now, even after that appeasement, Muslim membership in Congress decreases, plummets. Then next, Congress stops engaging Ashraf anxieties. This is where, I guess, the full-blown war between Jinnah and Nehru begins, and that's then onwards the pro-Nehru, pro-Gandhi people start blaming each and everything of every predicament of partition, etc., everything after partition on Jinnah. No fault of Congress ever again, because that's when Congress has had enough of Ashraf anxieties. Indian National Congress calls itself the sole representative of the Indian nation. Things remain. Wait, I can't understand my own handwriting now. I wonder what I had written. Shit. Things remain something in the next century. Okay, I guess I had written same. Things remain same in the next century, that is 1900s. Muslims continue to avoid the Indian National Congress, perhaps because, quote unquote, it now demanded representative bodies on an elective basis with greater confidence and urgency. Okay, so Muslims were losing their Muslim Ashraf elites were getting more anxiety. And 1906, the last year that the book looks at, colonial government shows willingness to consider the demand. 1st October 1906, Nawab Mohsinul Mulk, of the secretary of the Muhammadan Anglo-Oriental College of Aligarh, arranges Muslim delegation to meet Lord Minto, that is Shimla deputation. So the secretary of the Aligarh Muslim College himself called for the Shimla deputation, and Ashraf anxieties go mainstream for the first time in Indian politics in 1906. Okay, as late as 1906, and then December 1906, All India Muslim League is founded. Lahore Resolution in 1940, and then India loses a lot of its land. M. Shastri is saying that's the end of the discussion of this book. I'll try to be as detailed with the rest of the book as well. Let's see how long it takes. But reading it this way has basically given me a complete grasp on the basics of how partition happened. I really liked Venkat Dhulipala's paper as well, which we had discussed. Remember? Do you all remember, the old viewers, that there was a point of time when partition almost did not happen because Muslim unity almost absolutely got destroyed because of Shia Sunni riots that were happening. Okay, that was a fascinating section that Venkat Dhulipala brought out in his 2008 or 2010 paper. Ram is saying, is it necessary to defend the converts in the first place if you are in the position of power? I don't know for whom. Could you elaborate on the question a little? Is it necessary to defend the converts, defend the, I guess, the Muslim converts in first place if you are in position of power? I don't know. I've not thought about it. M. Shastri is saying, Dada, I watched a speech by Marathi Warkari activist. He gave a beautiful speech on Hindutva, what it means to be Hindutva, and why we need to learn history and dharma. This is why you need to learn from history, the structures, how they use situation to their own advantage. Yes. How prepared are we to defend them narratively? Okay. Attacking history can be countered by history only, and I know that. But my simple question is, why is it necessary for us to know how Muslims acted? We can simply run ISKCON-style conversion. How is ISKCON-style conversion going to win the narrative war? And is ISKCON going to be able to convert any Muslim? I do keep hearing this argument from time to time. I don't agree with this, but it will be probably one way to look at it. It will be interesting if someone actually manages this, that just conversions can solve every problem of India. I don't think so, but let's see. And as we learned that Indian population, Hindu population, was 4 times that of Muslims in the 1880s. What did that achieve? There were even lesser numbers of Hindus, even lesser numbers of Muslims when the invasions first began. Still, what? The number of Hindus, I don't think matters. ISKCON officially dissociates itself from being called a Hindu sanstha so as to avoid state control. Yeah. I don't blame them for that. Okay then, guys, this was it. Thank you, Bhupendra, for getting more members to our channel. Converting won't be the reversal of balance of power. Okay, thank you guys for joining the live stream. Good night. Bye bye.
श्रवरूढं महाभीमं गुणाद्रंष्टाङ्गरप्रदम् अस्य युक्तं त्रिनेत्रं च कपालकर्णिकाकरान् मुक्तकेशीं नरज्यः पिबन्तीं रुधिरं चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत् चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत् काली काली महाकाली कालिके पापहारिणी धर्मर्थमोक्षदे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते धर्मर्थमोक्षदे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते काली 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 काली